My feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. Happy Tuesday to you. Yeah, we're giggling a little bit because today's medical topic is quite a foreign one, if you will. Now imagine this story. You're walking through the park and you've forgotten your pluggies at home, so you're deciding you're going to risk it all to go barefoot because you want to connect with nature, and suddenly you connect with nature in a really, really sharp and real way, and intense pain shoots through your leg like an electric shock, and you rise from agony. You look down and you notice there's a devil doing, an actual devil thorn lodged on the ball of your foot. This is the worst day of your life. I think we've all been there. I remember
my childhood was full of thorns in the feet.
Stepping out of a pool and stepping onto a wasp. Ouch. So thorns, bee stings, splinters. We're talking all about it with Dr. Darren Green this morning in our Medical Tuesday chat. Give us a call on 021-4309-881. Dr. DG, what's up?
Great. DG, I love that. Dr. Darren Green, you Kat, you were talking about all the things that happened in my childhood. What is it about a thorn that is so painful?
Yeah, I think it's obviously because of the receptors on the skin. So that sharp piercing action of any sharp object, really, as it pierces, obviously it activates all those nerve cells, and the most sensitive parts of your body are the fingertips, the lips basically, and obviously the toes are also quite sensitive.
Yeah, especially the small one. The small one is
the one that
worst.
you knock against the furniture.
Oh my word. So what's the best way to alleviate the pain from something like a devil thorn or a thorn, and can it get infected? What's the worst that can happen?
What actually happens is if the tip, it's like a piece of wood or a splinter, same principle. So that sharp tip enters the skin, and depending on what you do with your balance after that, while you're putting all your weight on the foot, you can break the tip off and it gets left behind. So your body then detects this foreign invading body and then tries to attack it or eliminate it by an inflammatory response. And if not taken out, it can cause a secondary infection or an abscess, and then you often find a bit of a red swollen area that you can't actually put weight on.
So best to get rid of it when you can.
But is it true that, like, I've heard that, splinters often make its way out? Is that true?
Good question. So people say the body pushes it out.
Yes.
Because that's actually what happens. As the pressure and the inflammatory response occurs and all these different cell types are sent to the area, you do have a pressure effect with the redness, the pain and the swelling. And it moves closer to the surface of the skin quite often. But there are certain materials that can stay in the body without a dramatic inflammatory response, bullets being one of them, obviously, depending on where the bullet is lodged. And then, of course, shrapnel as well. So if you think about foreign bodies like thorns or whatever, they often cause a significant rotting reaction.
Yeah. What's the best way to get rid of something like a splinter once it's in your finger? Is it with a cork spell and then you have to open up that little hole and then push
you've got
it?
experience there.
Burn the needle, yeah.
It's the worst feeling.
Clever. Put it in a candle.
That was my childhood.
Sterilizing it. So yeah, often tweezers are good. A nice sharp set of tweezers, because there might be a piece of the splinter actually sticking out, as we do with wood, thorns, etc. But if it's embedded and the seal's already closed off, it will need to be, obviously, a small incision will need to be made and then removed.
Oh, it's some of the worst pain I've ever experienced as a child, and even as an adult. I can't stand it. Splinters. And you always wonder, like, how did that one little piece of splinter on that massive piece of wood happen to be there
at that
when I wipe my hand across the table? Anyway, we're going to keep our lines open, 021-430-9881, as we continue to chat about foreign bodies in your body, if you will, with foreign objects.
Invading objects.
Like bee stings.
All right, listen, insects are part of it as well. Things that get into your eyes and nose and choking as well. We'll talk all about that.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Okay, ready yourself for a very interesting topic, medically speaking, with Dr. Darren Green this morning. We're talking about foreign objects that happen to be stuck to your body. Things like splinters, things like bee stings. Oh, just the mere mention of that and looking at that picture makes my body shudder.
Fair share of bee stings. Dr. Darren Green, what's the best way to remove?
Well, I think the first thing is people need to understand that you need to obviously remove it as soon as possible. And the reason for that is there's often a toxin-mediated reaction that occurs where your body responds to that foreign substance or chemical. And what actually happens is that some people have an exaggerated response. People that are allergic to insect bites and bee stings, their immune systems are overactive, eager beavers, and then they flood it with all the inflammatory histamine and inflammatory mediators, and then you can have central symptoms like a closing chest, an itchy palate, for example, and a throat that seems like it's closing as well.
Yeah. So the best way of removing it is how? Do you just kind of take it, pull?
Good lighting, firstly, don't rush. your first chance is your best chance. So good lighting first, a tweezer, you can actually have a look and see if you can't identify the angle with which it's actually penetrated the skin to reverse it in the angle it went in. And that applies to splinters and bee stings. Remember, if you leave a piece behind, and often the inflammatory reaction just continues.
Yes.
And then you have, obviously, it's a little bit too late then if you leave it there for a day or two.
And does cards work, like bank cards? Or is that a movie trick?
Yeah, that's see, you don't know what direction it is, the insertion was. So if you're using a card and you're coming from one side, you can just break off the wooden splinter. So much better to get some decent lighting and then try and identify the angle at which it went in and then reverse that angle if you can.
Let's talk about something that a lot of people like to do in the outdoors, go hiking, and so you come back and there's a tick or two on your leg because you've just been among the brush and the bush.
There we go.
Oh, goodness.
Loving the hair because the ticks obviously love hair. It enables them to hide in really hairy people, and it also enables them to get a good grip on things so they don't just fall off when you're walking or running.
Shave before every hug.
Yeah, there we go. First thing.
So yeah, it's a big problem in summer because the big problem with tick bites, and specifically tick bite fever, is that the symptoms and signs manifest only about 9 to 10 days after the bite. People have already forgotten about the bite and so forth. So when they actually try and shake the tick off or pull it off, often the head of the tick is broken from its body, stays behind in the tip of the wound where obviously it had clawed into the skin. And that's how the vector is transferred, obviously the bacteria that causes tick bite fever, which is rickettsia.
Okay, what are some of the symptoms you need to keep?
For tick bite fever,
yeah.
great. So a headache, so it starts off with headache, fever, lymphadenopathy, which are swollen glands, basically in the neck, the groin, anywhere really. And then of course you have sensitivity to light and significant body pain as well.
Yeah.
And it's a simple 5-day course of treatment called doxycycline that you need to take to eliminate that.
And what's the worst that could happen if you don't treat it?
You can become, it can affect your brain, and you can get an encephalitis, which is inflammation and infection of the nervous system. Okay. And then obviously that could lead to seizures, it could lead to death. So tick bite fever is real, just like malaria is real, another insect bite that carries a vector.
All right, so to make sure you need to remove it properly and there's no head left behind, that's the most important.
And if you're traveling, give that history to your practitioner. And if you've been on a hike and you suddenly come up with flu-like symptoms, swollen glands and so on, mention to them you've been hiking. They should actually ask you.
Okay, very interesting. Well, we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Darren Green. If you've got a comment or a question regarding objects, and next we're going to be talking about the eyes and the nose, objects getting stuck in your body. Well, give us a call. That number is 02143. I forgot the number.
4309
9881. There we go.
Oh, yes, welcome back. That was a very interesting way to come back, wasn't it? Very silent. Very
welcome back.
Hush, hush.
Well, welcome back. We continue our chat with Dr. Darren Green. That number is 02143098881 if you have a comment or a question as we continue our chat around foreign objects stuck in the body. And we actually have a caller. We have Josh on the line. Good morning, Josh. Josh, are you there? Oh, no. Hi, Josh. Okay, we've lost him, Dr. Darren Green.
The foreign object in his hand is not working.
He's going to call us again.
While he's cycling.
But this might be a little bit of a silly question, but I wear contact lenses, and I've once had a lens go back. It felt like it went all the way back, but is it possible if you get something in your eye, it can go all the way to the back of the eye?
Normally not. It can't go all the way back to the back of the eye because of how the socket's designed and also where the muscles are attached. And also the space that's available there. So normally things like an insect or a metal shard or anything like that, normally it's the front of the eye, the front portion.
So what's the best way to get something that's stuck in your eye out? Because a lot of people would say, okay, look in this direction, and they open up a hole and they blow.
Yes,
and there's
that
fingers
freaks me
that
out.
goes there, and then there's water.
A tot.
A tot.
Have a tot.
glass.
A tot
That makes
glass.
sense.
Okay.
The tot glasses are useful if you're not near a medical centre where you have a proper eye dish or an eye bath. You get even canisters that fit like goggles on your eye.
Yes.
With a squeegee bottle that you put over the eye and then you can use. We use those to obviously wash out the eye decently. And we need loads of fluids, depending on whether it's a foreign body on a building site, like dust or metal or wood and so forth, or whether it's a chemical burn, where something splashed in your eye. You then need to use like almost 2-3 litres of fluid to flush the eye if it's a chemical burn, for example. But generally, if you're out, you need to embed the eye in some water while it's open. Then you'll obviously know the tricks of pulling the upper eyelid over the lower one, and then swirling your eye around while you do that, for example. Those are all useful tips. But if you don't, a tot glass obviously with sterile water in it, so boil the kettle, let it cool, use that. But if you don't have time for that, obviously just use clean water or spring water.
Yeah.
And then you put some water in the glass, and then you tilt your head back. Obviously, you try and open your eye and then pull the eyelid over it again afterwards. That sometimes rescues you in emergency situations.
Okay, that's very clever.
And obviously don't rub. Don't rub.
Yes,
Rubbing
no,
is the
salt
worst.
water,
painful
no.
red eye. What actually happens is the surface of the eye is it's called the cornea. It's the membrane, and what happens is it can get scratched, and that's called a corneal abrasion, which leads to visual problems and secondary infections and so forth. And metal shards obviously can rust, just like they do in the rain. They can rust in your eye and cause permanent damage to the eye.
Sure. Well, I believe we have Josh back on the line. Is he there?
Yes, I'm here.
Good morning, Josh.
Morning,
What's
Josh.
your comment or question for Dr. Darren Green?
I would like to know, please, is the ability of the ability to no, sorry, not the ability, whether getting stung, having an allergy to a bee sting or a sting from other insect, is that passed through the family? Could you inherit that from your parents or from a previous generation?
Good question, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
certainly. Great question. And an allergy-mediated response to things like insect bites certainly can also, just as other allergies are also often transferred in family lines to things like nuts and so forth, very much so. So I often know, I ask the parents when a child comes in with nasal symptoms recurrently, do you suffer from hay fever? And because it is quite an obvious genetic transmission. So bee stings also, definitely.
Can you go to a medical practitioner to get tested as they do on your skin to see whether you're allergic to bee
Little
stings?
Yeah, the problem with bee stings is you don't have a dramatic reaction to the first one. You have a reaction, and how you know you're actually truly allergic is actually often the second or third sting. But you can certainly, an allergologist or a specialist in allergies is certainly someone that could help you with that. And then there are ways internationally that they're used of desensitizing you. In other words, exposing you to a small controlled amount of the toxin at a time, allowing your immune system to develop immunity and resistance to that toxin over time.
Very interesting. Well, thank you. Our lines will continue to stay open if you've got a comment or a question. When we get back with Dr. Darren Green, we're going to talk about objects, something I think a lot of parents are well aware of with kids putting things up their nose and choking. So don't go anywhere.
It's my feel good breakfast show.
All right, we're back again with Dr. Darren Green for our final Medical Tuesday chat. And we're talking about all kinds of things that can be lodged in your body, in your ear, in your nose. Nose is what we're focusing on right now, because Zoe, you had a question to ask.
Well, yeah, Dr. Darren Green, little kids love to put buttons
They do
and beads and
indeed.
all
Indeed,
kinds of
yes.
things up their nose. What's the first thing parents should do in a situation like that?
Is my child breathing? Is the object so big that there's no air movement? So the first thing is look, listen, and then obviously then you can start looking at feeling. So have a look and see whether the child can still move air or talk even. If they're talking, generally the airway is patent and you can hear them and they don't have an impaired voice and the air movement is good, then you know you're happy. But generally it often happens in the nose. That's the universal choke sign, by the way, for anybody that doesn't know. If you want to tell someone you're choking, point to your throat or do that. So the beads get stuck in the nose. The nose doesn't go upward. For those that don't know, it goes backwards. So often if it's superficial, you can actually see the object and remove it gently while the patient is positioned carefully if the airway is not obstructed, obviously, and then you can take it out. Money, coins, buttons, those are all the things that kids love putting in orifices, and we need to obviously be vigilant about that. But the airway is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how you ascertain.
I wish we could find out the reason why they do that. We have a caller on the line right now, Aisha. Good morning, Aisha.
Good morning, Dr. Darren.
Morning.
Morning. I would just like to know quickly that my son, he had a small accident. He fell and the lead of the pencil went into his palm. At that moment, I thought it was out, but obviously after more than a month, I still see nerve pains. So just want to know, should I take him to the doctor to take it out or just leave it there? Because it's not bothering him, but it's bothering me now.
So could you just repeat that maybe just one
Yeah.
more time? What
Yeah, he
exactly
fell and-
is, what happened?
The lid of the pencil. He fell and
the
the
lid of the
pencil
pencil.
nerve, yes, went
Yeah.
into his palm. and I tried to
Palm of
kick
his
it out.
hand, I think she said.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so obviously if the tip is still there, it needs to be removed, and if you can't do it at home, it should certainly be removed. If the point came out completely on its own, then one would certainly just clean the wound with a general antiseptic and use something like Bactroban or whatever, and then keep an eye on it. But if there is still a piece left behind, it will need to be removed.
Do not leave it behind.
Okay.
Thanks so much for that call, Aisha.
Thank you.
Now, we were talking about choking
Yes.
and the international side.
Correct.
And I was at a restaurant one time and I was trying to eat a piece of garlic for my own health to try and cure
Roasted
flu
garlic.
symptoms. This is not funny. But I nearly choked on a piece of garlic in a restaurant. And at that moment, I had no idea what to do. Luckily, with my reflex actions, I could get it up. But what happens if you could be an adult or a child.
Happens to anyone.
Yes, the Heimlich is the way to go, right?
No, the Heimlich's the end way. There's simpler ways, and that's called a back slap.
Yeah.
So what you use is the palm of your hand with a very firm slap onto someone's back. So
Can I be
yes,
your guinea
quickly.
pig?
You'd actually.
Demonstrate.
So let's say
Firstly, I'd come to you. You'd show me. Oh, you're not talking properly. I'd ask you to turn a little bit, and I'd take the palm of my hand, aim for the middle part of your thoracic spine, in between your shoulder blades, and then as I do that, obviously give you 5 really good whacks like that.
Okay,
And
okay.
if that doesn't work, then we progress to Heimlich, which is a fist.
Yeah.
And just under your rib cage, we'll feel over there. The fist will be inserted there. With the other hand over it.
Yeah.
And when I actually ask you to relax your body, I'm gonna press it in and up, and a sweeping movement in and up.
Okay, that would.
And then often it will shoot out and project across the room, but that's how we do a Heimlich maneuver.
Okay, so there we go.
Can I quickly ask, what do you do in the situation if you're by yourself, you don't have someone that can help you?
Goodness.
Yeah, so if you're alone, obviously, you must remember that if you keep your mental wits about, you might even be able to Heimlich yourself if you
Okay.
don't.
Push in and
Panic.
out.
And obviously, you need to call for help if you can by using all sorts of ways. It's about the airway being obstructed. If that obstruction can't be removed in the upper airway, that's when a cricothyroidotomy would have to be made, where we find the insertion in the cricothyroid cartilage and make an incision to open the airway, just so that you can breathe.
Thank you so much, Dr. Darren Green, and thank you so much to our callers for your interesting questions. We'll be doing it again next week, Tuesday. Thanks so much, sir.
Great
We've got a
stuff.
very interesting guest outside.